Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into satin slippers and stepping quietly into the polished, whispering corridors of a medieval court. You're not a queen, you're not even a duchess. You're something much trickier, a lady in waiting. That means your life is equal parts pageantry, pressure, and pretending not to notice things that could get you beheaded. Candlelight flickers across embroidered tapestries. Trays of wine pass by like gliding ghosts. And your job is to look like you belong here while knowing full well you never quite will. You wear velvet. Yes. But you also carry secrets. You smile at lords who could ruin you with a whisper. You stand behind a throne, always in the corner of the portrait, always within earshot of power, and never quite allowed to wield it. And you better get used to aching feet, freezing rooms, and compliments with knife edges. This world runs on etiquette, envy, and exhaustion, and you, my dear, are right in the center of it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are 15 years old when the summons comes. You've always known this day would arrive. Of course, your mother has been grooming you for court since before you could even hold a fan properly. You've learned how to sit still for hours, how to keep your eyes lowered when the wrong man is looking, and how to eat soup without making a sound. All of that training comes to a head when a messenger arrives with a wax-sealed letter. Her Majesty the Queen requests the presence of Lady Eleanor's daughter to join her household. No one asks if you want this. You're of noble birth. And that means you serve where you're told. Your mother's smile is both proud and terrified, like she knows she's feeding you to a gilded beast. She helps you into a new gown, so stiff with embroidery it could stand up on its own, and warns you to always agree with your superiors and never get caught alone in a hallway with a man wearing spurs. When you arrive at court, it's everything and nothing like you imagined. The castle smells like stone, candle grease, and lavender water. Your room is tiny, but your window overlooks the rose garden. You share the space with another lady-in-waiting named Marjorie, who doesn't speak much, but who snores like a noblewoman possessed. Your first day begins before dawn, with a knock at your door so soft it barely registers. That's the cue time to rise. You grope in the dark for your shift, shivering as your feet hit the icy floor. The castle never quite warms up, no matter how many tapestries hang on the walls. You splash cold water on your face from a ceramic basin and dress with quick, practiced movements. You don't wear color, yet only soft blues and dull greens. The queen must shine brighter than all of you. At this hour, no one smiles. The other ladies gather in the solar, blinking in candlelight, hair half braided and sleeves only halfway laced. The older ones whisper about court gossip, while the younger ones just try not to trip over their own hems. You quickly learn the rules are unspoken but rigid. Don't speak first. Don't sit unless invited. And for heaven's sake, don't outshine the queen's favorite. That would be Cecily, a raven-haired beauty with perfect posture and an expression like she's perpetually just smelled something unpleasant. Historians still argue whether ladies-in-waiting held real influence or were merely decorative pawns. You're starting to understand that the truth is murkier. Yes, you attend to the queen, help her dress, and pass her letters, but you also absorb her moods, protect her secrets, and sometimes, when she's especially cruel or kind, you feel like a piece of her shadow. You're given a schedule so tight it could strangle you. Morning prayers, personal grooming, helping the queen into her garments, attending meals, entertaining guests, reading aloud, keeping company during embroidery. It's like being a noble pet on display. You aren't paid. Of course, your family provides a stipend to the court for the privilege of your service. Perks. You get the finest gossip, better food than your cousin stuck in the countryside, and a front row seat to the dangerous theater of power. Your days bleed together, but always begin with this sense of alertness. One wrong word can end your court life. A misplaced look might end your marriage prospects. There are no second chances here. Still, there are moments small, strange ones that cling to you. The way the queen laughs when she forgets herself, or how the young page boy fumbles every time he tries to light the hearth in your room. Once, a knight in crimson smiled at you as he passed. He probably smiles at everyone. But it lingered. Fringe tidbit. It's rumored one lady-in-waiting in France used to carry around a squirrel on her shoulder like a fashion accessory. You don't have that luxury. You carry pins, powders, and the emotional weight of your queen's melancholy. Tonight, after a long day of silent observing and carefully placed curtsies, you return to your chamber, fingers aching from too tight stitching. Marjorie is already asleep, her snores filling the air like bagpipes. You kneel for a quick, half-hearted prayer, crawl into your narrow bed, and stare at the wooden beams above. Tomorrow will be exactly the same and entirely different, because here at court, comfort is an illusion, and safety is just a matter of timing. The castle doesn't wake. It shifts. Long before the sun has dared peek over the horizon, the halls begin to hum with faint movement. Somewhere, a kitchen boy is already cursing at a fire that won't catch. A sleepy priest is muttering Latin under his breath. But in the ladies' solar, where you begin every single morning, the real business of the day is underway, the delicate, dangerous art of existing at court without ruining your life before breakfast. The solar is a shared chamber, not for sleeping, but for gathering, prepping, and quietly judging. The windows are tall but narrow, frosted with night's chill. A single hearth glows in the corner, throwing just enough warmth to make you wish you could sit closer. You, of course, do not sit. Not until the queen has had her hair brushed and her rings polished and her mood stabilized with rose water. You arrive at the solar just after 4 bells, your gown rustling with each careful step. The stone underfoot is brutally cold, even through your leather-soled slippers. You join the semicircle of young women huddled around the table, where a few sleepy eyes flick toward you. No one says good morning. It's not that kind of place. Here, greetings are more like battlefield acknowledgments, brief, suspicious, and optional. This is where the ritual of the braid begins. You sit as still as you can, spine straight, trying not to flinch as Cecily, yes, that Cecily stands behind you, wielding a brush like a sword. She's surprisingly gentle, and yet somehow manages to tug just hard enough that you remember who holds the upper hand in this moment. As she weaves your hair into something court acceptable, you watch the others do the same, pairs of young women braiding and brushing, muttering critiques just low enough to avoid punishment. The queen's moods often dictate the hierarchy of the day. If she wakes irritable, everyone suffers. If she's delighted, Cecily becomes even more insufferable than usual. So, every lady-in-waiting must look perfect. That means hair plaited with silk ribbons, clean fingernails you scrubbed yours raw last night, and no visible wrinkles. One girl once dared arrive with a stain on her sleeve, and she was reassigned to the Queen's widowed aunt in Yorkshire, essentially medieval social death. Historians still debate how much autonomy ladies-in-waiting truly had. Some argue they were little more than glorified servants. Others suggest they were spies, diplomats, and secret influencers in all but name. You, right now, feel somewhere between both extremes. Your nobility. Yes, but nobility with chapped hands and a blister forming where your bodice bites your ribs. The sky outside begins to lighten, smearing pale pink across the horizon like watered-down blood. A bell chimes once from the tower. That's the signal. The queen is stirring. Immediately, the solar shifts into organized chaos. You grab your small lacquered box filled with pins, combs, scented oils, and follow the line of ladies as they march to the Queen's private chambers. The hallway is still shadowed, lit only by flickering sconces, and the scent of beeswax mingles with lavender from the sachets tucked in your sleeves. When you enter her room, it's a study in contrast. The walls are draped in deep blue tapestries, embroidered with scenes of falconry and romance. Her bed is enormous, canopied, and surrounded by sheer curtains that catch the faint morning light like spun glass. And there, nestled among feather pillows and silk sheets, is the queen, your queen, already awake, propped up like a statue with a sour expression and an outstretched hand demanding her rose oil. She doesn't speak at first. That's normal. Your job is not to entertain, it's to guess. You dab a little oil at her temples. Cecily fluffs the pillows. Another girl brings in the gown of the day, a green velvet trimmed with white ermine. The queen finally sighs and mutters something about how she dreamed of geese again. Everyone nods solemnly, as if this is a matter of state. You help dress her carefully. There are layers, of course linen, then wool, then velvet, each fastened with care. One wrong tug and she'll snap at you. Yesterday she pinched a girl's arm hard enough to leave a bruise just because a sleeve was misaligned. You don't want to be next. She makes a joke something mean, something clever, and everyone laughs. You do too. It doesn't matter that it's not funny. It matters that she feels like it was. Quirky tidbit of the day. The queen insists on drinking her morning posset from a silver goblet shaped like a duck. No one's sure why. Some say it was a wedding gift. Others whisper it belonged to her late mother. You once overheard a maid say she talks to it. You'd never dare ask. After she's dressed, perfumed, and has chosen the right ring for the day today, it's the emerald one dangerous. She finally dismisses you. You curtsy and back out slowly, careful not to turn your back on her until the door clicks shut behind you. Only then do you exhale. The morning has barely begun, and already you feel like you've survived a skirmish, back in the solar. The tension eases slightly. Someone snorts at Cecily's clumsy handling of the perfume vial, and a few muffled giggles ripple through the room. But even now, you're not truly relaxed. You never are. Your day is dictated by the whims of another, and every moment could be your last as her favorite or your first as her scapegoat. Still, as the sun finally breaks through the narrow window, you allow yourself a single luxury. You lean a little closer to the hearth, warming your fingers for just a few seconds. Small victories matter here. The queen's wardrobe weighs nearly as much as her crown, and you are one of the unfortunate souls who must help her into it, layer by layer, inch by inch, with the grace of a ghost and the nerves of a deer in hunting season. You follow her from the solar to her private dressing chamber, an inner sanctum scented with crushed violets, beeswax, and the faintest trace of political despair. The walls are hung with mirrors imported from Venice hazy, imperfect things that reflect a dozen distorted queens. As always, your job here is simple. Do not offend her, even by accident. The room's centerpiece is a great carved wardrobe, taller than two men and filled with color-coded gowns, each of which costs more than your family's estate. Her Majesty has strong opinions about textiles. She despises satin on odd-numbered days and once accused a handmaid of sabotage for delivering her damask robe a week early. Today, the mood is uncertain. Her lips are tight and her shoulders tense. Something or someone has irritated her, and you'd be wise not to remind her that you exist too loudly. Your hands move automatically, lifting the undergown first, smoothing the linen chemise over her thin shoulders. Her hair, brushed earlier in the solar, is braided and threaded with pearls. You step carefully around her, fastening bodice laces without touching her more than necessary. She doesn't speak for a while. And you do not fill the silence. That's another rule. Silence is safer than a wrong sentence. But finally, as you slip her final sleeve over her arm, she mutters, "The bishop's niece has terrible taste in shoes." You blink, caught off guard, then recover with a gentle, "I did notice the clashing embroidery. Your Grace." She smirks. You've passed today's first test. Dressing a monarch is like assembling a live puzzle with explosive consequences. Everything has meaning. The green brocade signals favor toward the northern lords. The sapphire ring is a message to her sister-in-law. Even the girdle she wears around her waist silver, hung with charms, can start rumors if worn too loosely. You've seen noblewomen faint from the pressure of trying to decode what the Queen's outfit really means. Historians still argue whether royal dressing rituals were acts of sacred symbolism or mere vanity wrapped in protocol. Probably both. To the Queen, however, it is theater, and you, her backstage crew, are expected to never miss a cue. Once fully dressed, the Queen steps onto a small, raised dais near the mirror. You and the other ladies fall back in unison. She examines herself with narrowed eyes. The neckline is wrong. She says, "It's not. Everyone knows it's not. But that's not the point." Cecily rushes forward, fingers fluttering. "I can adjust it, Your Grace." She can't. The neckline is sewn. But the Queen lets her fuss with it for a few seconds anyway, then waves her away. You hold your breath as the Queen walks past you. She pauses briefly, glancing at your ribbon. "That shade suits you," she says. "Oh, that's dangerous. That's flattering. That's visible." You murmur a polite thanks and watch Cecily's eyes narrow behind her. One compliment from the Queen can paint a target on your back faster than a spilled goblet. Now you've been noticed. That can mean opportunity or disaster, possibly both by noon. Next comes the procession to court. The Queen glides through the halls like a ship with too many sails, and you trail behind her. Silent, poised, trying not to trip on your own hem. She greets a few advisors in passing, and you catch snippets of conversation harvests, border skirmishes, some issue with a nobleman's rebellious son. None of it involves you, and yet all of it shapes your world. Fringe fact for today: some queens insisted on being addressed only with specific titles depending on the time of day. Your Grace in the morning, my radiance by supper. Yours has not sunk to that level. Yet, you arrive in the Great Hall, a cavernous space where light filters in through stained glass and dances on polished stone. The nobles have gathered, arranged by precedence and pettiness. You remain at the edge, part of the decor. Your place is behind the throne, not too close, not too far, always visible, never heard. There are more rules here. Of course, never yawn, never look bored, never allow your gaze to linger on a nobleman's doublet, no matter how embroidered it is. You're a lady in waiting, not a lady in longing. The Queen listens to petitions for half an hour. You stand still, legs trembling slightly, wishing you'd eaten more than half an apple this morning. The hall is chilly despite the fire, and your hands are folded so tightly in front of you that your fingers go numb. Then comes the moment. A duke approaches. He bows. The Queen smiles. Her hand lifts and your job kicks in. You step forward with a goblet of warm spiced wine. Not too fast, not too slow. Eyes down, wrist steady. You offer it with just enough deference to signal respect, but not so much that you look groveling. The Queen accepts it and sips. A nod. Approval. You step back, heart pounding. You have survived the morning. And then, a whisper, barely audible. From the Queen to Cecily. She didn't spill a drop. Cecily's smile does not reach her eyes. Yours doesn't dare form at all. Court, in theory, is about governance. But you're starting to understand what it's really about. Gossip, perfume, and power delivered in teaspoon doses between gulps of cinnamon wine. After the queen has been dressed, admired, and offered her obligatory praise, you shift into the next act of the never-ending performance, being present without actually being noticed. You and the other ladies-in-waiting accompany Her Majesty to the receiving chamber just after the bells toll the second hour past sunrise. The room is a Baroque nightmare, gilded chairs that no one dares sit on, paintings of long-dead ancestors who all somehow look judgmental, and tapestries that muffle every sound except the squeak of shoes and the rustle of skirts. This is where nobles come to plead, brag, and maneuver. It is where alliances are whispered into being and enemies are drowned in pleasantries. You stand at the queen's side, hands folded neatly in front of you. Your gown itches, but you don't dare move to scratch it. Your hair is too tightly braided, your bodice just a bit too tight. But none of that matters. You must look serene. Serene and unbothered and mildly, eternally interested in absolutely everything. The queen greets the Bishop of Almsworth with a forced smile. You pass her a silk cloth to dab her lips between sips of wine. Today it's heated with cinnamon and a touch of honey. She murmurs something about his niece's upcoming wedding, and you resist the urge to smirk. She was dragging the poor girl's fashion sense just an hour ago. You file that contradiction away. It might be useful someday. A young nobleman enters next, Lord Armand. If you remember right, 20-something, all swagger and scented gloves. He bows deeply and makes some gallant remark about the queen's radiant complexion. Predictable. You glance down, hoping your boredom isn't visible. Then he turns to you, just slightly, and smiles. No, that's not allowed. He doesn't say a word to you. Of course, wouldn't dare, but the smile is too direct. You pretend not to see it. Cecily definitely does. Her brows tighten just a little. Great. That's the sort of thing that gets whispered about before dinner. That's the kind of moment that can turn a harmless morning into a social minefield. Historians still argue whether such small interactions, glances, gestures were truly meaningful in court dynamics, or whether later writers just romanticized everything. You suspect they mattered more than the official decrees. One glance can shift the balance of a week. One smile can stick like burrs in silk. The queen, naturally, notices everything. She sips her wine and says, with artificial sweetness, "Lord Armand, do remind your mother of our next hunt. I've not seen her in a fortnight. It's a casual jab, a reminder that she sees where his loyalties lie, and also a subtle test. Does he flinch?" He does, slightly. Another point for her. Meanwhile, you refill her goblet. Your hands are steady, but your mind is spinning. Did you do something wrong? Did your eyes linger too long? You didn't smile back. Did you? You're fairly sure you didn't. In the background, a harpist plucks quietly. The music is supposed to ease tension, but it's almost maddening. You count the notes to keep yourself from fidgeting. A woman with a laugh like a broken bell enters, followed by two ladies in headpieces, tall enough to cause injury. You try not to stare. Instead, you adjust the queen's train just so, lifting the edge off the floor before a footman steps on it. Fringe tidbit. One French court had a rule that no lady could walk with her train dragging unless she had at least 3 titles. You have none. You also once tripped over a duchess's velvet hem during a feast. You were ignored for 3 days afterward. Midway through the reception, a page brings in a new tray of cinnamon wine. You're not sure what they've added, perhaps cloves, but the queen notices immediately. Her nose wrinkles, and she murmurs, "Too heavy." You take the tray, exchange it for another. Make a mental note never to trust the red-haired page with refreshments again. Cecily leans over and whispers something in your ear. The Duke's steward says you smell like rosemary. Have you changed your hair oil? It's meant to sound helpful. It isn't. It's a warning. The fact that anyone's talking about you at all is already risky. You give her a soft smile that doesn't reach your eyes. How generous of him to notice. You reply. Behind all the formality, the game continues. You're not just here to serve. You're here to witness, to gather, to interpret. When a baroness leaves her gloves behind, you're the one who sees the note tucked inside. When two nobles pause just a little too long in the archway, you clock it. None of it is your business officially. Unofficially, your memory is a ledger. The queen finally tires of conversation and leans toward you. Enough of this. Prepare the reading chamber. You nod, curtsy, and leave the reception with a few others, relieved to stretch your legs, but nervous for what's next. As you walk the corridor, Cecily catches up. You're being noticed, she says flatly. That's not always good. You glance sideways, and yet, here you are, reminding me of it. She offers a smile, almost kind. Better me than someone less forgiving. Court is exhausting. But what's worse is never knowing when you've become the target of the day. Sometimes the only warning you get is a smile that's just a little too friendly. There's a reason embroidery is called a gentlewoman's warfare. By the time you're settled in the Queen's reading chamber, bent over fine linen stretched tight in a wooden hoop, your hands already ache not from the stitching itself, but from the tension thrumming beneath every conversation. It's quiet, almost unnaturally so, save for the occasional scrape of a needle or the low murmur of the Queen's voice as she listens to a passage from a devotional text. Today she's chosen something pious, about Saint Margaret and her miraculous escape from a dragon. You glance at Cecily, who raises one perfectly shaped eyebrow, as if to say, a dragon. Really, you sit 2 cushions down from the Queen, close enough to be visible, but not so close as to suggest presumptuousness. That's a very fine line. You place your embroidery hoop in your lap, needle between your fingers, and begin stitching a vine pattern you've done so many times you could probably do it with your eyes closed, which, to be fair, you might accidentally do. Sleep is a rare luxury. Your seat also puts you across from Lady Arabella, a sharp-tongued countess's daughter whose stitchwork is always just slightly better than everyone else's, and who knows it. Your tension is a bit loose, she says softly, glancing at your embroidery. You respond without looking up. So is your hem, my lady, touché. A few soft titters echo across the cushions. This is the real dual words dressed up as observations. Kindness sharpened into points. Outshining someone isn't done with volume or bragging, it's done with flawless stitches, a perfectly timed sigh, or a clever barb that looks like concern. You know, for example, that Lady Arabella recently received a gift of Venetian lace from a mysterious admirer. You also know that lace has shown up in the Queen's sewing basket this week, and not by coincidence. You say nothing, but your eyes linger just long enough. That's how the message is sent. Historians still argue whether embroidery circles among noblewomen were spaces of camaraderie or quiet competition. Some think they were a rare haven for female bonding. Others see them as a minefield of status anxiety, held together with silk thread and suppressed sighs. You're beginning to believe it was both. Perhaps especially both. The Queen sets her book aside and reaches for her embroidery, a handkerchief for her cousin's betrothal. She doesn't embroider well, but everyone pretends not to notice. Your job is to glance at her progress every so often and murmur something supportive. Your rose petals look so delicate today. Your Grace. They do not. They look like squashed spiders. But she smiles, faintly. And that's what matters. Fringe tidbit. One German duchess in the 13th century became so obsessed with embroidery that she stitched herself a dress made entirely of gold thread. It was said to weigh over 30 pounds and gave her shoulder pain for a decade. She considered this a triumph. Perspective. In between the scratch of needles and the flipping of pages, the gossip begins. It's not spoken loudly, and never directly, just murmurs behind fans or across cushions. A new lady arrived from the marches. A nobleman's daughter fainted in chapel pregnant. Maybe. The Queen's cousin was seen leaving the stables with his boots unbuckled. You stitch and listen. One ear always open. Your fingers dancing over the fabric with practiced elegance. Someone mentions a ball planned for the coming week. Your stomach tightens slightly. The Queen will dance, of course, and so will the favored ladies. If you're chosen to attend her, dress her, escort her. Hold her goblet, that's an honor. If you're overlooked, it's a quiet insult. Cecily is already humming softly, no doubt imagining her hairstyle for the occasion. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. Just last month, she cried for an hour when the Queen gave her a coral necklace, not because she disliked it, but because it clashed with her gown. There are battlefield wounds less dramatic than Cecily at a color mismatch. The Queen leans back suddenly. "I've tired of this," she says, gesturing to her embroidery. "Tell me a story." Everyone tenses slightly. Storytelling is risky, too boring. And you're dismissed, too bold. And you're remembered for the wrong reasons. Lady Margaret tries first. Something about a swan and a lost ring. The Queen yawns. Then Lady Eleanor. A dull tale of a saint and a fire that doesn't quite land. Then, to your horror, the Queen turns to you. You tell me something. Your heart skips, but you keep your expression neutral. Very well. Your Grace, you say. And then, slowly, you begin a story you heard once from your nursemaid about a girl who disguised herself as a boy to escape a cursed convent. You soften your voice, add a few courtly details, and make the ending just romantic enough to please. The Queen listens, eyes half closed. At the end, she nods. Better than the swan. She says, "You don't smile, but your heart, for a moment, swells." The moment ends when Arabella drops a spool of silk thread and it rolls under your cushion. You retrieve it, hand it back, and she whispers, "Watch your stories. Some people find boldness unbecoming." You offer her a look of perfect serenity. Only the ones who've been outshone. Then, the Queen rises, and everyone follows. The reading hour is over. You gather your things, your hoop and scissors and half-finished vine, and file out behind Her Majesty. Your hands may be sore, your back stiff, and your brain buzzing with veiled insults, but you won the quiet battle today. And at court, those victories are what keep you alive. Mass is meant to be sacred, a pause from the endless waltz of courtly games, a time to reflect, to kneel, to whisper prayers into cold air that smells of beeswax, old stone, and incense. But for a lady-in-waiting at a medieval court, it's just another performance. You walk to the chapel in a tidy line behind the Queen, your head bowed, veil in place, the hem of your gown brushing the floor like a respectful whisper. The cold is sharper here, the stone beneath your feet still clinging to the night's frost, even though the sun is already rising in earnest. The chapel is small, built more for appearances than spiritual grandeur. A vaulted ceiling, carved saints glaring down, and a pulpit that creaks ominously whenever the chaplain leans too hard to the left. The Queen sits in the front pew, flanked by her closest ladies. You're positioned just behind them, in a row of uncomfortable wooden benches that seem designed to encourage repentance through back pain. You lower yourself gracefully, keeping your skirts tucked in and your hands folded in your lap. Beside you, Lady Eleanor sniffs dramatically. She has a holy nose, as Cecily calls it, meaning she weeps theatrically at every Mass. Whether it's for actual sins or for attention is Open to interpretation, the service begins. Low chanting, the waft of frankincense. You bow your head at the right times, murmur the right phrases in Latin, and focus on keeping still, but no one is really paying attention to the words. Because this, too, is a game. You feel it in the subtle glances, the twitch of a fan, the slow shift of weight as a lady leans just slightly to the side, angling her view of someone else across the aisle. Prayers may be whispered, but the real dialogue is in the eyes. You are watching and being watched. Today, there's something interesting happening in the second row. A young knight Sir Thomas, barely out of pagehood and already overconfident, is positioned suspiciously near the Lady Adeline. You remember her recently widowed, incredibly wealthy, and apparently very bored. Their heads dipped toward one another during the reading of the epistle. Nothing overt, just a pause too long, a glance too sharp. Historians still argue whether romantic entanglements at court were strategic necessities or dangerous indulgences. Frankly, they're both. Because if Lady Adeline's hand lingers on Sir Thomas's wrist for even a second longer tomorrow, the Queen will notice, and if she doesn't approve, you could be packing your things by nightfall. And here's the problem: you saw it. And now you must choose what to do with that knowledge. Fringe tidbit in one court. A duchess once confessed during Lent that she had entertained sinful thoughts about the bishop's mule handler. Whether she meant that literally or metaphorically is lost to time, but it caused a scandal that echoed for a decade. The priest drones on, reciting a passage about humility. Irony. You risk a glance at the Queen. Her expression is unreadable, which is never good. Cecily, sitting beside her, tilts her head down with exaggerated grace, as though she's just so moved by the liturgy. Please. Cecily hasn't been moved by anything except diamond embroidery in months. Your mind drifts, as it always does during Mass, to your own sins. They're small, mostly a moment of vanity, a sharp word, a lingering thought about a certain knight's hands. You tell yourself it's human. You tell yourself you'll confess it at Easter. You tell yourself you're better than Cecily, and then feel guilty for thinking it. Welcome to religion at court. The service ends with the familiar blessing. You stand, curtsy toward the altar, and follow the Queen out. The sunlight outside is dazzling after the dim chapel, and for a second, you stumble just slightly. A moment, the Queen glances back, raises an eyebrow. You straighten, nod, smile. Crisis averted, or maybe not. Because as you walk down the corridor, Lady Adeline catches your eye. Just briefly. It's enough. She knows you saw. That's how it begins. One silent acknowledgement. One shared secret. Now you hold something fragile and dangerous leverage. You could whisper it to the Queen. You could let it slip to Cecily. You could do nothing, but doing nothing is a choice. Too, and at court, choices echo. You return to the solar after chapel, your mind buzzing beneath your polished exterior. Someone's laid out ginger cakes. Lady Eleanor has resumed weeping softly into her embroidery. Cecily is already positioning herself near the window for optimal lighting. Everything is normal, and nothing is. And the Queen, as always, says nothing, just drinks her rose water and watches. You're tired of hiding behind pleasantries, tired of lace and lavender and lording over silence, but mostly tired of pretending that chapel is about salvation. It's not. It's another mask, another chamber in the Palace of Power. You just happen to be kneeling in this one, and tomorrow you'll kneel again. Lunch at court, what they like to call the midday meal, sounds grander than it feels. You expect platters of roasted meats, goblets of spiced wine, and musicians plucking lutes from balconies. That does happen, just not for you. You, As a lady-in-waiting, hover on the edge of the feast like an ornament someone forgot to put away. You're not a guest. You're not a servant. You're not supposed to be hungry. You're supposed to be elegant, even when your stomach growls like a beast trapped under a brocade corset. The great hall hums with noise. Nobles arranged in perfect seating order murmur between mouthfuls. The queen sits at the high table beneath a canopy, flanked by dukes and bishops and one unfortunate ambassador from Aragon who clearly doesn't speak French but nods anyway. You, naturally, are standing. You've been on your feet since before dawn. And now your job is to help your mistress select the correct knife from a set of 5, fold her napkin just so, and occasionally whisper reminders like, "That's the Earl of Grantham's nephew. Don't mention the archery tournament." All while pretending you're not eyeing the honeyed figs on the silver tray. Lunch begins with a soup, more of a broth. Really, the queen has a sensitive stomach. It's served warm, laced with herbs, and carried in by footmen who look half your age and already more tired. You hand her the spoon, not the decorative one, the correct one. You do this with the seriousness of a surgeon. Meanwhile, you are handed nothing. Historians still debate whether ladies-in-waiting were regularly fed during court feasts or expected to eat separately. The answer is usually, it depends on the queen, the kingdom, and how well you were liked that week. Your queen, she's generous when it amuses her, which is to say, not often. Today, you're offered a trencher of bread hard as stone and shaped like a triangle, and half a pear that looks like it gave up on ripening halfway through. You nibble discreetly, too quickly, and you'll look greedy. Too slowly, and you'll faint before the pheasants arrive. You also drink small sips of watered wine. You don't get the good stuff, but that's fine. You're not here to be drunk. You're here to be poised. Across the room, a group of knights laugh too loudly. One of them glances your way. Not Sir Thomas this time, a different one, older, with a smile like he's practiced it too much. You lower your eyes immediately. A second too long, and you're someone's joke at the next hunt. And then inevitably Cecily makes her move. She glides up to the queen's side like a cat, bearing a small silver dish of sugared almonds. "Your Grace," she says sweetly. These came fresh from the apothecary's kitchen, as if she made them herself. The queen accepts one, and Cecily's smile widens. She's laying groundwork. This is about the ball. You're too tired to be subtle. But you try anyway. I've heard almonds are a remedy for melancholy. You murmur, not quite to the queen, but just loud enough. The queen pauses, then chuckles. "So I've heard," she says. "One point for you. Fringe tidbit medieval noblewomen believed that pears caused fainting if eaten while standing. You've broken that rule 3 times already today, and haven't fainted once, though you are very, very dizzy. The feast drags on. Dishes parade past roast duck, pies shaped like peacocks, loaves of bread stamped with the royal seal. Most of it isn't for you. You can smell it. That's enough. You glance over and spot Lady Arabella nibbling something under the table. Smuggled cheese, bold. You consider asking for a bite, but your pride wins. At some point, the conversation turns to marriage alliances. Someone mentions a proposed match between a minor duchess and the king's cousin. The queen waves her spoon dismissively. "He's too short. I don't want to look down at my own bloodline." Everyone laughs. You laugh too, even when it's not funny. You laugh. The servants clear the second course. The queen dabs her lips with linen and begins a slow scan of the room. She does this at every meal, cataloguing who's seated near whom, who's whispering, who looks too pleased or not pleased enough. It's a silent tally of shifting loyalties. Your feet are numb. Your smile aches. Your last bite of food was 20 minutes ago. You don't let it show. Historians paint court life as sumptuous. But they rarely mention how many girls nearly fainted in silence, trying not to offend a duchess by chewing too loud. And then, disaster. Lady Eleanor drops a silver spoon. It clatters against the stone with a sound like a dual bell. Everyone turns. The Queen raises an eyebrow. Clumsy, she says. No malice, no warmth, but you know what it means. Eleanor will not be called on to accompany her to Vespers tonight. You want to reach out, say something kind, but you can't. Not here. So you say nothing. The meal finally ends. The Queen rises. Everyone bows or curtsies. You help lift the train of her gown as she leaves the hall. Behind you, the tables are being cleared, the scent of roasted meat fading into smoke and sweat. Your stomach growls again. You ignore it. You're not here to eat. You're here to last. Afternoons at court are a paradox-structured chaos. Every hour is scheduled, yet nothing ever goes quite to plan. Right now, the Queen is meant to be overseeing the final arrangements for a garden fete, something light and charming, with sugared plums and embroidered canopies, but instead, she's pacing furiously along the gallery, muttering about the wrong shade of yellow in the heraldic banners. You follow at a respectful distance, close enough to respond if summoned, but far enough not to seem eager. That's a delicate balance. Overeager is suspicious, too aloof, and you're labeled sulky. It's like dancing through a forest of invisible tripwires in satin slippers. The gallery itself is beautiful arched windows spilling golden sunlight onto polished floors, oil portraits lining the walls, most of them glaring at you like they know your secrets. The Queen's train trails behind her like a judgment. I said goldenrod, not saffron. She snaps, holding a fabric swatch to the light. The difference is nearly imperceptible. Nearly, you murmur. Goldenrod catches the late sun better, your grace. She stops, turns. Precisely, she says. Another invisible test passed. You mentally exhale. These afternoon hours are filled with errands that aren't quite errands. Escorting Her Majesty through the gardens, sitting nearby while she critiques a tapestry, reading aloud while she pretends not to nap. Today, she's fretting about appearances. A visiting noble family arrives tomorrow, and their matriarch is known for noticing things. If the hem of the Queen's gown is an inch too short, or the orchard lacks perfectly ripe quince, it could be deemed an insult. You don't understand why, but you do understand the consequences. Historians still argue whether such obsessive details were truly high politics or just the results of aristocratic boredom. The answer, from where you stand, is both and also neither. It's about control. In a world where so little is stable, an embroidered napkin matters. You're assigned to inspect the arrangements for the afternoon entertainment, a trio of musicians, a small puppet show, and most worrisome, a poetry reading. The Queen insists it all must be tasteful. That word again. Tasteful means nothing, yet controls everything. You leave the gallery and head toward the small colonnade where the event will be staged. The air is heavy with the scent of blooming roses and something less pleasant manure from the nearby stables. You wrinkle your nose. The puppet stage is already being constructed, and two nervous-looking minstrels are arguing about whether a lute sounds better in shade or sun. You don't have time for their debate. You scan everything with practiced eyes. Is the linen draping? Or uneven are the cushions plush enough? Do the colors match the Queen's gown for the day? That last one is a guess. You've not been told what she'll wear, but you know she hates clashing with her surroundings. You gently suggest the red canopy be replaced with something in cream. The steward hesitates. You lean in and say softly, "She's still furious about the saffron. Do you really want to roll the dice?" The canopy changes. A fringe fact for you. There's a recorded incident of a noblewoman in Burgundy refusing to enter a tent because the curtain tassels were too rustic. It sparked a week-long feud that ended in 3 broken betrothals. That's court life. High stakes, low causes. You return to the Queen's chambers in time to find her holding court not officially, but privately with a few select ladies, including Cecily and Lady Arabella. They're sipping herbal cordials and pretending not to be competing. You slide into your seat as quietly as possible, only to find Cecily already eyeing you. "Did the canopy meet Her Majesty's vision?" she asks. "Sweet as honey," you smile. "It does now. We thought red might be too bold for a puppet show." A faint chuckle from the Queen. Cecily's eyes narrow, just slightly. The Queen asks for a reading. You're chosen. Your throat tightens. But you step forward and select a small volume of courtly love poetry, knowing it's best to keep things light. Nothing tragic, nothing too romantic. She once banned a poem mid-verse for being drearily French. You read carefully, measuring each word. The rhythm of it soothes you. The verses speak of longing glances, stolen handkerchiefs, and moonlit gardens. You don't miss the irony. Your own affections, should you dare have any, must remain hidden behind the 20 layers of etiquette and veils. When you finish, there's a pause. Then, unexpectedly, the Queen says, "I had a handkerchief stolen once." She doesn't elaborate. Everyone smiles nervously. Lady Arabella picks up the thread. By a love-struck knight, no doubt. The Queen rolls her eyes. By my brother. He used it to polish a dagger. Polite laughter ripples. The moment passes, and then the Queen rises. "I'd like to walk the garden. It calms my nerves. You and Cecily follow. The others peel away." Relieved. The garden walk is both an honor and a test. The sun is warm, the air sweet with lavender. Birds chirp like they haven't a care in the world. You trail behind Her Majesty, matching her pace, ready to offer a parasol or an arm should she stumble. Not that she ever does. Queens never stumble. You pass a hedge maze, and she pauses. "They'll expect us to be charming tomorrow," she says. You nod. They always do. She glances at you. "And have you ever been in love?" The question catches you completely off guard. You keep your face still. "I've admired," you say carefully. She smiles. Thin and knowing. "That's all we're allowed, isn't it?" Then, as if nothing had been said, she continues walking. You follow, heart pounding, even in the sunshine, even surrounded by roses and birdsong. You're never safe from being drawn into her inner world, or being cast out of it. But at least the canopy matches her dress. Small victories. By now, the day is waning, but at court, things don't wind down. They simply shift into evening mode, which means the stakes get slipperier, the smiles sharper, and your corset somehow tighter. The Queen returns from the gardens just before twilight, cheeks slightly flushed. A sign that she's either in a good mood or simmering. You've learned to read the difference. Tonight, it's the first, which means the upcoming salon gathering will be pleasant. Not perilous, or so you hope. The salon, held in the Queen's private withdrawing chamber, is less formal than court, but no less political. The fire is already lit, casting gold across the tapestries. A table of sweetmeats, candied rose petals, sugar-dusted almonds, tiny pasties filled with quince waits by the hearth. You won't be sampling any. These are for guests. You're here to refill goblets, flatter egos, and if needed, redirect conversation when it veers toward scandal. You're not alone. A handful of noblemen and ladies have been invited. You recognize most of them, Lord Percival, whose boots are always just a little too polished. Lady Seraphina, who once cried for an hour after someone compared her to a swan. And of course, Cecily, who now holds court near the fire, like she owns the place. You stand by the wine, pouring with silent elegance. The first rule of salons: do not become the subject. That's for people with titles and money and husbands. You are the smooth surface on which everyone else projects their reflections. Tonight's conversation turns quickly to literature. The Queen has recently received a manuscript, a translation of Ovid. Of all things, risky, romantic, potentially scandalous. She holds it up like a cat dangling a mouse and reads a few lines aloud. Love is a kind of warfare, she reads, pausing to sip her wine. Fitting. Don't you think her eyes scan the room like she's expecting someone to contradict her? No one does. Of course not. Lady Arabella tuts gently. That's a rather coarse way to describe something so divine. You nearly laugh. The Queen smiles without warmth. Divine. It sounds exhausting to me. You busy yourself arranging the wine flagons? You're not a part of this circle, not exactly. But your proximity gives you something just as valuable information. Fringe tidbit. A real salon scandal once occurred when a noblewoman recited an original poem comparing her rival to a roasted goose down to the giblets. The rival responded by throwing a gilded candlestick. It remains one of the few documented instances of actual violence during embroidery hour. Back in the chamber, someone brings out a lute. Lord Percival offers to play. You brace yourself. He's not awful, but his dramatic eyes closed, fingers trembling, every note stretched for emphasis. The Queen humors him. Cecily claps politely. You offer a smile so neutral it could be painted on a fresco. You'd rather be anywhere else. And yet, something is shifting tonight. The Queen seems softer, or maybe more nostalgic. At one point, she asks you to sit nearer, gesturing to the empty stool by her side. It's an honor. Yes, but also dangerous. Everyone sees it. Cecily's eyes burn. Arabella's brow rises slightly. You sit carefully, spine straight, pretending not to hear your own heartbeat. The Queen speaks low. What do you miss most from before court? You blink. No one ever asks you questions like that. I miss silence. You admit. The kind you can actually feel. She nods. Yes. And the freedom to say something foolish without regret. You're not sure what to say to that. So you don't say anything. Historians still argue whether queens formed real friendships with their ladies, or whether it was all calculated intimacy. You're living proof that it's both. These moments feel personal, but they come wrapped in a veil of power. Later, as the gathering breaks up, you stand beside the Queen as she says her good nights. She makes observations about each guest as they leave. Lady Seraphina should stop painting her eyebrows. She looks surprised, even when she's furious. Or, Lord Percival plays the lute like it owes him money. You chuckle softly. The Queen catches it. And you, she says, turning. You stayed silent all evening. Were you bored? Never in your company. Your Grace. You reply smoothly. Too smoothly. She studies you. A lie, but a well-constructed one. Then she sweeps out of the room. You exhale. The fire crackles. The guests are gone. The cushions still smell faintly of rosewater and anxiety. You tidy up quickly, straightening stools, gathering forgotten gloves, checking for any dropped notes or favors. You find a half-bitten quince tart tucked behind a cushion. You leave it. That feels like a trap. Cecily lingers. Of course. She likes you tonight, she says, voice like spun sugar. Careful. She might ask you to read again. You respond with a yawn. I'll study more over it. Then, just in case. Cecily doesn't laugh. The salon is over. But its ripples will carry into tomorrow. Who was favored? Who was forgotten? Who stumbled? Who sang off-key? You head back to your shared chamber. Slippers whispering over stone. You peel off your gown, comb out your hair, and finally sit in silence. You didn't eat dinner. Your back aches. You might be the topic of gossip tomorrow, but you survived the salon. And that, in this world, is enough. The palace quiets as night deepens, but it never sleeps. Somewhere, always, a candle flickers, a page scurries, a cat howls from the kitchens. You lie awake in the narrow bed you share with Cecily. Well, not share, but sleep next to, separated by the thinnest sliver of chill air and thicker layers of unspoken competition. You'd think exhaustion would knock you unconscious, but your mind buzzes like a hive. Every word the Queen spoke, every glance exchanged during the salon, every breathless moment where you balanced on the knife edge between favor and failure. Cecily turns in her bed. Her breath is light. Faked, maybe. You once caught her pretending to sleep when Lady Arabella visited late, just to listen for secrets. That's the kind of vigilance court breeds. No moment is truly private. Even in your shift, with your hair unbraided and your face free of powder, you feel like you're still on display. Then comes the knock. Soft, deliberate, you rise without speaking. Cecily doesn't stir. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and open the door to a page barely 12, pale with nerves. The Queen requests you. He whispers. Your heart stutters. This late never a good sign. You follow him down the corridors in slippered silence, heart thudding louder than your footsteps. The halls are shadows and echoes. You pass stone saints watching from alcoves, tapestries fluttering in the draught. This part of the palace always feels like it's holding its breath. When you reach the Queen's private chamber, she's alone. No guards, no ladies, just her unveiled, her hair unpinned, sitting near the hearth in a robe the color of storm clouds. She doesn't look up at first, just gestures to the chair opposite. You sit. No one speaks. Then, do you ever wish you could vanish? You blink. Vanish, Your Grace. She nods, still staring into the fire. Not disappear. Just vanish from the weight of it all. You don't answer. You're not sure if you're meant to. I saw my reflection in the wine goblet tonight. She says, it looked like a stranger or a ghost. You murmur something comforting, something vague and court-appropriate. She waves it off. I liked your reading earlier. You didn't make it too sweet. Most people try to sugar everything for me. She looks at you. Do you ever speak your mind? You smile faintly. Only when I want to lose my head. She laughs short, surprised, wise. Historians still argue whether queens ever showed true vulnerability to their attendants, or if every moment was a rehearsed performance. Sitting here now, watching her rub her temples like any tired woman, you're tempted to believe this is real. But you've been wrong before. She rises and pours 2 cups of something warm, wine and valerian. She says, my mother used to make it. Swore it brought honest dreams. She hands you a cup. You sip. It's bitter, herbal, with a sweetness that lingers too long. I dream of oceans, she says softly. I've never seen one. Isn't that absurd? I'm queen, and yet I've never seen the sea. You want to say, you could go, but that's the wrong answer. Queens don't go. They stay. They endure. They dream of things they can never touch. Fringe tidbit, one medieval queen kept a painted shell from a distant shore on her vanity and made every visitor swear it sang at night. Whether it did or not, no one dared contradict her. You talk softly for a while. Not as queen and lady, just as 2 tired women. She asks what you'd do if you weren't here. You lie and say, teach children. The truth is, you have no idea. You've been in court so long, you wouldn't recognize your own life without its chains. Eventually, she yawns. Go, she says gently. Before Cecily starts inventing stories, you rise, curtsy low. and slip out. Your feet are cold on the stone, your thoughts colder, because now you've seen behind the curtain. Not just the Queen's mask, but yours, too. You return to your bed and slide under the blanket. Cecily doesn't move, but you can feel her awake. You were summoned, she says flatly. You say nothing, after a pause. Did she cry? Still nothing. She turns toward the wall. She cried last time. Silence stretches like fabric before a tool. Finally, you whisper, she's tired. Cecily hums. Aren't we all? You close your eyes. Valerian buzzing through your veins. The Queen's words still in your ears. Do you ever wish you could vanish? Yes. Every day. But you don't. Because this is court. And vanishing is the fastest way to be forgotten. Morning comes again, though it hardly feels like it ever left. You open your eyes to pale sunlight bleeding through the chamber shutters, and already Cecily is up, brushing out her hair with unnecessary flourish. She glances at you sideways. You should hurry, she says. The Queen requested you for her dressing. Of course she did. You rise and go about your own quick toilette splashes of cold water, hair braided simply, a touch of rose balm to your lips. There's no luxury here. You might be close to the Queen, but you still dress like someone who might be replaced tomorrow. The Queen's dressing chamber is already bustling when you arrive. Maids prepare the warm wash water. The day's chosen gown hangs from a carved wooden screen, and a selection of jewels glitter on a velvet cloth. You take your place without a word. One of the junior ladies is still lacing the Queen's undergown, her fingers fumbling. You step in gently but efficiently and take over. The Queen raises an eyebrow but says nothing. You work in silence, drawing the laces snug but not cruel, arranging the linen chemise just so beneath the bodice. The Queen prefers her sleeves draped, not puffed. You remember. You always remember. Historians still argue whether ladies-in-waiting were more akin to servants or companions. This moment makes it clear you are both. A confidant with calluses, a noblewoman with a servant's tasks. I dreamt of waves again, the Queen murmurs. You meet her eyes in the mirror but say nothing. Then comes the gown, deep blue velvet, embroidered with silver thread. It takes 3 of you to manage the fabric. You secure the sleeves, then move to the jewels. She's chosen a simple necklace today, a string of pearls with a sapphire drop. You fasten it behind her neck. Careful not to let your fingers brush too long against her skin. She looks radiant. Cecily offers from the side. The Queen glances at you. What do you think? You consider. The blue makes your eyes look like they've seen too much. There's a beat of silence. Then, better than a compliment, she says, it's almost true. You finish the final touches, the veil, the perfume orange blossom today, and the thin girdle of silver links around her waist. You step back, and she appraises herself in the mirror. She's beautiful, yes, but also armored, and you help build the armor. The rest of the morning unfolds in a blur of formality. An audience with a visiting abbot, discussion of a new marriage treaty involving the Queen's cousin. You stand beside her, always still, always silent. Your presence is decoration and surveillance. You watch everyone, especially the ones who try not to be watched. Fringe tidbit. One medieval queen demanded her ladies record her outfits in a ledger, everyday fabric, color, jewelry, even scent, so that no ensemble was ever repeated. The records filled 3 entire volumes. You would believe it. By midday, the Queen retreats to her private solar. You accompany her and help her remove her outer garments. She wants a nap, or perhaps just silence. You ease her shoes off and place them neatly by the hearth. She lies down on the daybed, fingers resting loosely on her stomach. Her face, for once, looks young. Read something, she says without opening her eyes. You select a book of Psalms, her favorite. Your voice softens. You read. Her breathing slows. You keep going, even after you suspect she's asleep, because that's part of it too. Being here, being useful. Later, you're dismissed with a nod, and you slip out quietly. You return to the ladies' quarters, where the others are embroidering and gossiping. Cecily raises an eyebrow. "You were missed," she says. Tone sharp, but face pleasant. "Not by anyone important." You answer sweetly, taking your place and threading your needle. Lady Arabella snorts. "Careful, you're beginning to sound like her." You keep stitching, because that, perhaps, is the greatest danger of all. Not being dismissed, not being ruined, but becoming her. You catch your reflection in a polished picture face still young. Still yours, but it's starting. The expressions, the careful silences, the grace carved from necessity. You wonder how long it takes before it becomes permanent. Then Lady Eleanor pricks her finger and swears quietly. And the moment passes. The needlework resumes. The laughter returns. But something in you stays quiet. Because this morning, when you fastened that necklace, you saw it. Not just the Queen, but yourself. In 10 years, maybe 5, maybe sooner, the Queen's afternoon today is less ceremonial and more political, which somehow makes it even more exhausting. She'll be hosting a private strategy council, and while you're not expected to speak, your presence is required. You're to sit in the corner with a quill and parchment, take notes when asked, fetch documents when summoned, and most importantly, be invisible. Still, you dress carefully. You know better than to blend too well. The Queen has her moods. Some days, she prefers her attendants draped in pastels, like blooming flowers around her throne. Today, it's gray, soft, dove-gray silk, with no embroidery and a narrow girdle. Respectable, modest, forgettable. You arrive at the solar before the others. The table is already set, maps unrolled, a plate of candied nuts untouched, a goblet of wine half empty from a previous meeting. You straighten everything, light more candles, unfasten the window shutters for a bit of breeze. The Queen arrives soon after, followed by her advisors, 3 men with balding scalps, heavy rings, and the air of people who've never carried their own satchels. You take your place, quiet, ready. The discussion begins. Borders, tax revenues, a potential betrothal between a cousin of the Queen's and the son of a powerful count. Names fly, titles blur, everything is coded. No one says what they mean outright, and yet you understand. That's the skill you've sharpened here, reading between, listening to what's not being said. The way Lord Walford hesitates before endorsing a trade deal. The sharp look the Queen gives when someone suggests the King's sister marry below her rank. Even the sigh that escapes when someone mentions war in the north. Historians still argue whether queens wielded true influence in court decisions or merely played supporting roles. What they rarely capture is this: a well-timed eyebrow raised from the Queen could topple a whole suggestion. Power isn't always shouted. Sometimes, it's whispered in velvet robes and carried on the flick of a fan. At one point, she signals to you. You rise immediately and bring her a scroll from the cabinet. She doesn't look at you, but you feel the warmth of being seen. You pour her wine next. She doesn't thank you. She never does. You never expect it. This is how it works. A fringe tidbit in one 14th century court. It's said that a lady-in-waiting once orchestrated a secret treaty by forging her mistress's handwriting. When discovered, the Queen simply claimed it had been dictated. The treaty stood. The lady was never punished. In fact, she was promoted. Back at your table, your hand cramps. The quill has been in motion for over an hour. You pause only briefly, flexing your fingers under the table. The Queen notices, of course she does, and murmurs something to Lord Walford. Moments later, a break is called. She never said it was for you, but you know it was. Everyone files out. You remain, eyes down, pretending to reread the notes while the Queen sips her wine in thoughtful silence. "You're learning faster than most," she says after a moment. You look up. "Thank you, Your Grace." "Don't thank me," she replies. "Just don't make the mistake of believing that loyalty is remembered. That hangs in the air like smoke." You nod, because you understand exactly what she means. Later, after the advisors return, you resume your station. The room grows stuffy. The candles burn low. The politics drag on, but you remain alert. You always remain alert, because one wrong word, one miscopied name, one mistaken alliance, one absent note could be used against the Queen, or worse, against you. The meeting ends near dusk. The Queen dismisses everyone with a wave. You rise, roll up the maps, and gather the scrolls. The parchment you used to take notes is placed carefully in the cabinet, where you know it will be copied again by someone else tomorrow. Nothing leaves her chambers unless she says so. She watches you quietly. "Then you'll sit beside me at supper." That's not an offer. It's a shift, a change. You bow, as Your Grace wishes. She nods, already turning away. You carry your bundle of scrolls with a steadier hand than you feel. Back in the corridor, the other ladies are waiting, pretending not to be, but absolutely keeping track of who comes and goes. Cecily raises an eyebrow. Lady Eleanor tilts her head. Arabella just stares, calculating something silently. You pass without a word. You have supper to prepare for, and more importantly, a seat to occupy, right beside the Queen, a place that every woman here has tried to claim, and one that's far, far easier to lose than to win. The Queen's supper is not a banquet, it's a quieter, more intimate affair, attended only by her inner circle and a few honored guests. But don't be fooled. If the court were a game board, this meal is the center square. And tonight, for the first time, your name is on the invisible list of players who matter. You dress accordingly. No bright colors, no grand jewels, just a soft green gown with silver trim deliberately muted, modestly cut. You pin your hair with restraint. No veils, no plumes. You want to look polished, but never presumptuous. Sitting beside the Queen requires you to sparkle just enough, but only in her shadow. The supper is held in the Queen's private dining hall, a room paneled with pale oak and hung with faded tapestries depicting old battles that no one remembers anymore. A fire glows in the hearth. Candles flicker along the long table. The scent is a comforting mix of spiced wine, wood smoke, and roasted meat. The Queen enters last, as always, and you rise with the rest. But unlike them, you don't return to the wall once she's seated. You glide forward and take your chair beside hers, the smallest shift. Yet it ripples through the room like a stone dropped in still water. Lady Arabella nearly drops her napkin. Cecily goes very still. Historians still debate whether seating placement at meals was meant to reflect affection or strategy. At court, it's both. Your chair tonight says I see you. It also says you're now a threat. The meal begins with a clear broth delicately seasoned, gently steaming in gilded bowls. You lift your spoon only after the Queen lifts hers. Her elbow brushes yours. Whether by accident or design, you don't know. You keep your eyes on your bowl. Conversation starts light. Poetry, the weather, a new lute player with distractingly long fingers. But slowly, it turns, as it always does. Politics seeps in like cold air under a door. A minor rebellion in the West, a noble family's suspicious absence from the latest court procession. The Queen speaks little, letting others talk themselves into knots. You listen, absorbing every phrase, every hesitation. Lady Eleanor ventures a bold opinion about inheritance rights and is promptly silenced by a single raised eyebrow. The Queen turns to you. "What's your view?" she asks. Every eye shifts to you. You swallow once, then smile. I believe the right answer is always the one your grace already knows. Laughter rises around the table, polite and relieved. You've ducked the trap this time. The queen, mercifully, seems amused. Fringe tidbit in one medieval court. A lady-in-waiting was exiled for suggesting the queen's favorite dressmaker charged too much. The actual charge implied criticism of royal judgment. The dressmaker stayed. The lady did not. More courses follow: roasted pigeon, stewed leeks, poached pears in wine. You eat little, drink even less. You laugh when appropriate. You nod when required. You notice that Cecily's wine cup remains untouched. She's keeping a clear head, and that means she's planning something. The queen doesn't drink much either, but she leans closer with every passing course. You weren't born to this, she says quietly. You shake your head. She looks at you sideways. That's good. The ones born to it make the worst servants. You raise your goblet slightly in silent agreement. She clinks it. More laughter, more stories. A minor scandal involving a lost falcon and a bishop's wig elicits delight. But beneath it all, tension simmers. Who is the queen favoring tonight? Who gets a lingering glance? Who is ignored? You are not ignored. You're asked what music you favor, what herb you would plant in a garden, what you would read if you had only one book for the rest of your life. The questions seem harmless, but they're not. They're tests. You answer carefully, honestly, and with just enough cleverness to satisfy without provoking. And by the end of the meal, you've survived. No, you've risen. When the final course is cleared and the queen retires, you rise with her. She doesn't look back, but she knows you're there. Outside, the air is cool. The stars are beginning to show through the clouded sky. You walk beside her in silence to her chambers. She doesn't speak. Neither do you. At her door, she stops. You learn fast, she says. That's dangerous. You bow. I'll try to be slower. Then she smiles. Just a flicker. No, don't. She disappears into her chamber, and you are left in the corridor, heart racing, mind spinning. You've eaten with the queen, spoken beside her, matched her tempo, and now everyone knows it. Which means tomorrow, you will be tested, harder than ever. Morning brings a crisp breeze and the sound of distant bells, signaling mass. But today, the usual rituals feel slightly sharper. You notice it the moment you arrive in the Queen's chamber, the way Lady Arabella is already positioned too close to the wardrobe, subtly claiming your usual spot. The way Cecily speaks louder than necessary, recounting a dream that just happens to involve a radiant queen and a traitorous lady-in-waiting. The message is clear. Last night changed things. You sat beside the queen. You answered her questions. You matched her pace. That means they're circling now. Like hawks, not because you're weak, but because you've just proven you're not. You respond as expected, silently, precisely, helpfully. You adjust the hem of the queen's gown while Lady Arabella forgets how to fasten the sleeves. You retrieve the correct comb when Cecily offers the wrong one, and when the queen glances at you briefly, you offer a subtle nod. No words pass between you, but she knows you're still sharp. Mass is held in the royal chapel, a vaulted stone chamber where candlelight flickers off saints' faces carved in alabaster. Incense clouds the air. You sit 2 rows behind the queen, hands folded, eyes down. But you see everything. Sir Thomas is here, finally returned from a border skirmish. He looks more tanned, more tired, but just as distractingly tall. He catches your eye for the briefest moment during the Kyrie. You pretend not to notice. You have to pretend. After the service, the queen lingers to speak with the bishop. The rest of the court fans out into the courtyard, basking in the rare sun. You try to follow discreetly, but Cecily corners you by the stone fountain. You looked very comfortable at supper. she says, voice honeyed. How thrilling to finally have your moment. You smile. It's not my moment. I just borrow the Queen's light. Cecily tilts her head. Be careful. Borrowed light can burn. Fringe tidbit. One lady-in-waiting in 15th century Aragon was so disliked by her peers that they paid the royal jester to trip her in front of the entire court. She did not fall. She caught the jester and whispered something that made him cry. You don't have that skill. Not yet. But you're learning. Later, you're summoned to help arrange the Queen's writing desk. She has letters to draft responses to marriage proposals, declarations of intent, thinly veiled threats. You sharpen the quills, lay out the wax seals, and sort the parchment by thickness. She gestures toward a half-written letter and says, Finish the draft. You blink. Me. Yes. You can write, can't you? Of course, Your Grace, but... She fixes you with a look. You know what I want to say. Say it, so you do, carefully, thoughtfully. You write in her voice, commanding, elegant and vaguely amused, a response to a duchess trying to maneuver her son into a courtship with the Queen's niece. You finish, hands trembling only slightly. The Queen reads it, then folds it, seals it, sends it. No edits. Historians still argue whether royal women truly authored their own correspondence or simply approved drafts. What you know now, both are true, but tonight, the Queen's voice was yours, just for a moment. Evening approaches again. You assist with dressing once more, this time in plum silk with gold stitching, a darker color, more somber. It fits the mood. At supper, you're placed one seat away from the Queen, not beside her. The message is subtle, but unmistakable. You didn't fall, but you flew too close. You eat in silence, answering questions only when addressed. You smile less. You nod more. And afterward, when the Queen retires, she does not look back. That night, back in your chamber, Cecily is already writing a letter, perhaps to a cousin, perhaps to no one. She doesn't speak. You climb into bed slowly. You're clever, she says after a long pause. You glance over. Thank you, but cleverness fades. You look at the ceiling, only if you let it. Cecily doesn't answer. The room goes still. Outside, owls call across the trees. Somewhere, a gate creaks in the wind. You stare at the wooden beams overhead, remembering the Queen's words. You learn fast. That's dangerous. You haven't lost her favor. But you've been reminded quietly, unmistakably, that it is never permanent. Tomorrow, you'll wake again and start all over. Because here, every day is a performance, and no one claps at the end. Another dawn. You rise before the sun. Today's sky is bruised purple. The clouds heavy with the kind of chill that creeps beneath your gown and settles deep in your bones. The air smells like wet stone and frost. You dress without help, no maids. No fuss, just you. Your fingers numb as you fasten the stays and wrap your shawl tight around your shoulders. The court hasn't stirred yet, but you can already feel the tension in the walls. Something is coming, something just beyond the edge of today. Down in the lower courtyard, servants are hauling crates from a newly arrived carriage. You catch whispers, letters from the north, gifts from a foreign court, rumors of unrest. Nothing new, and yet everything matters. At the Queen's chamber, her mood is unreadable. She's already dressed, standing by the window with her arms crossed, hair braided into a crown. Her posture is as rigid as the oak trees below. You enter silently. She doesn't acknowledge you. You know better than to speak first. After a long pause, she says, I received a letter. You wait. From the Marchioness of Averton, a beat. She recommends her daughter to serve at court. Says she's gentle, obedient, and graceful. You offer a soft, the safest sound in the language. She sounds dreadful. the Queen adds. You risk a small smile. She turns. Do you think I need more girls with sweet smiles and empty heads? You shake your head. You have plenty of both. Another silence. Then, to your surprise, she laughs, not sharply, not bitterly, just genuinely. You're very good at this, she says. Smiling, you offer. No, she says. Surviving. That word again. Survival. Historians still argue whether court ladies held real agency, or if they merely floated like reeds in royal currents. What they miss is the daily effort it takes not to drown. Every step, every smile, every breath. The Queen moves to her writing desk. Would you respond to the Marchioness? You blink. Me. She hands you parchment. You know what I'd say. You do. You write with her tone gracious but cool. Flattering, yet immovable. You draft the letter, and when you pass it back, she scans it quickly. Fold it, she says, and seal it. You obey. This time, she doesn't edit, doesn't even read it a second time. Later, you accompany her to the council chamber. Today's topic: supply shortages in the East and whether to reroute funds. You stand behind her chair, eyes low, mind sharp. You know who favors what, who's stalling, who's faking concern. It's all theater. And you're seated right in the wings. You hand the Queen her signet ring without being asked. She squeezes your wrist, just once. Barely a gesture, but it says everything. You leave the meeting just before the midday bell. A page finds you near the chapel with a summons. The Queen wants you in her gardens. Of course she does. You find her alone, beneath the arbor where the roses are beginning to bloom. She holds a pruning knife. It gleams like a sliver of moonlight in her hand. They always grow back wrong if you cut too softly, she says. Snip. A blossom falls. You watch her work. They're delicate. No, she replies. They pretend to be. She glances at you. Do you know why I haven't dismissed you? You shake your head. Because you don't ask stupid questions. Because you know when to speak and when to disappear. And because you haven't tried to make yourself important. You don't know what to say. So you say nothing. Cecily thinks she'll outmaneuver you. The Queen continues. Arabella still believes titles mean intelligence. But you're dangerous in a quiet way. You look at your hands. Is that good? She smiles faintly. It's the only kind of dangerous I tolerate. A moment later, she nods toward the gate. Go rest. You've earned a few hours of pretending this place isn't a minefield. You curtsy. Thank you, Your Grace. And next time, she adds, bring a better poem to read. You smile and turn to leave, the weight of that moment pressing against your spine. You pass Cecily in the corridor. She gives you a look that could frost a fire. You nod politely. Later, you sit beneath the chapel's eastern wall, writing nothing in particular. A page passes. Then Lady Eleanor. The sun moves across the sky. You've spent another day threading the needle. And once again you've survived. The sun has long since vanished behind the towers, and the palace glows with candlelight and coals. Somewhere in the great hall, laughter echoes. In the kitchens, dough rises in the quiet warmth of stone ovens. And in your small chamber, you lie very still beneath your woolen blanket, eyes closed, the day's armor peeled away at last. Your body aches in quiet. Familiar places, shoulders, feet, the small of your back, the price of grace, of silence, of never slipping. Outside the window, an owl calls. The air smells faintly of rosemary and soot. And the Queen, somewhere not far, is likely sitting beside a window just like yours, watching the same moon, hearing the same owl, thinking thoughts she will never speak aloud. You've made it through another day, with your name still intact, with no bruises but the invisible kind. Tomorrow, it all begins again, The dressing, the smiling, the listening, the dodging. But not tonight. Tonight, there is stillness. There is breath. There is the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat and the soft hush of wind against the shutters. You close your eyes, and for just a little while, you allow yourself to vanish. Not disappear, not escape, just soften, float, drift. You are a lady in waiting, yes, but tonight you are simply waiting for sleep, and it is already on its way.